I want to talk about the children that we often miss. So, when most people think of selective mutism, they picture a child who never speaks in school, and these children are often recognised and referred more quickly. But the children that I'm increasingly concerned about are those with low profile selective mutism. They speak just enough to avoid attracting attention. So they might answer the register, whisper one-word responses, or occasionally answer a direct question. Maybe in maths, if they're great at maths, they might even put their hand up to answer a question. But adults often describe them as quiet, shy, maybe lacking in confidence. However, when we look beyond the amount of speech, we can see that communication is still significantly restricted. And these children are often surviving the school day rather than fully participating in it. So, what does low profile selective mutism look like? So, these children can rarely initiate communication. They seldom ask questions or volunteer ideas, report problems, or seek help. And they often appear compliant. They may simply agree with adults or copy what everyone else is doing. But a useful question is not can they speak, but can they communicate freely when they need to? Can they explain confusion, report bullying, ask for clarification, or express emotions? And often they can't. So talking is possible, but functional communication remains severely restricted. Well, my thinking has changed. I was actually going to share a video that I did 8 years ago where I talked about it as a phobia of talking, but I now think that explanation is too narrow. Today, I see selective mutism, particularly in neurodivergent children and young people, as a nervous system threat response. So communication becomes unavailable because the child no longer feels sufficiently safe to access it. And it's often the expectation to communicate rather than the speech itself that creates the threat, which helps explain why we frequently see an overlap with autism, PDA, language disorder, sensory processing differences, and trauma. It isn't that they don't want to communicate, their nervous system cannot support communication in that moment. So, why does this matter? Well, low profile selective mutism leaves children especially vulnerable because adults often assume they're coping. And these children may never tell anyone they don't understand, are overwhelmed, are being bullied, are in pain, or simply need help. Because many mask successfully all day before collapsing emotionally at home. If we only measure speech, we miss communication vulnerability. So our role now means that my assessment begins with the understanding of the whole communication profile rather than simply trying to increase the speech output. I want to understand language, social communication, executive functioning, emotional communication, sensory processing. I work with some great OTs, nervous system regulation, and the environments in which the child feels safest. So, our first role is to create safety, reduce communication pressure, and support authentic participation. Because when communication feels safe, speech often develops naturally as part of that process. So, I'm actually pleased my thinking has evolved over the last 8 years. As clinicians, we should continue learning from research, from neurodivergent people, and from the families we support. Low profile selective mutism reminds us that speaking and communicating are not the same things. If we focus only on speech, we risk overlooking children whose communication needs are just as significant.